Hi, this is Nancy with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy, here to bring to you part 3 of the Great Lakes Voyage quilt. It was funny, I had to look down to see what it's called. I know what it's called, but the Great Lakes Voyage is its fancy name. What we really call it is Learning to Quilt Too. So this is what the cover of the book looks like. It's really pretty. Thank you, Teresa. And it's about 50 some pages, I think, something like that. So it's very good value. So with this, we have been working so far on our mariner's compass. So I've got my mariner's compass completely pieced into a circle, and I want to tell you how important it is to kind of block this. When you get it done, you might find that some edges are a little rumply here, even though we've done all that spray sizing. That's when I want to recommend that you take your iron with steam and press it down, especially if you can get one of these wool mats. These wool mats are really fabulous and work great for pressing all of your quilting down really, really flat. Now this one is 18 by 24, so not quite big enough to get the very edge of this, but I think it'll do the job. So I want to steam it all the way around because these curved edges are bias edges, so they could get kind of rumply. And then here's the trick. Once you have done the pressing, let it cool. If you pick it up while it's hot, it's just going to get all rumply again. So let it cool down. So while that is cooling down, I'm going to show you what our next step is. We need to make the square that is going to go around the mariner's compass. So on this quilt, which is the light colorway, you'll see it's this orange square going around. That is one piece of fabric. I'm going to show you how to cut that piece of fabric and then how to piece one entire circle. It's really fun. You're going to love it. So to start with, I want to tell you about the freezer paper sheets. Now these are, you can use your freezer paper that you can get at the grocery store. And I do use this all the time. But it is just easier if you use the one that's cut 8.5 by 11. And I think they even make this one in 8.5 by 14 if you need that kind of bigger one. But you can use the freezer paper from the store or just make photocopies directly onto this. And that's what I did. So here I'm going to take, because my piece is larger than 8.5 by 11, I've got 2 sheets of paper and I'm going to tape this together. And I'm just using some packing or some blue painter's tape there because honestly I can press right on top of that and it doesn't melt. I find that to be pretty important. This is the fabric that I'm choosing for my background square, and I'm going to cut that larger than it needs to be and then fold it in quarters. So simple enough, right? Just folded it right in quarters. Now, whoops, I'm going to have to move this guy out of the way. He's all cooled off, nice and flat now. Let's move him over here so I can put this here. Now, when I'm pressing the template onto this, now this has been photocopied onto the dull side, so this is the shiny side of the freezer paper. We want the legs, so this is what I call the legs, to be on the 2 folded ends. So let me line this up proper. So here's the double fold. Here's the fold. So this has 2 individual folds. Here's the big fold. And this is the middle. So you want to look down and go, all right, this is the middle. This is very important because if you turn this and cut it out, you'll be going to get a new piece of fabric to finish it off. But I'm going to place it so that the legs are on the folds. Now this is cut larger than I need, so I'm okay that this extra here is out here. That's all right. I just need it so that the legs are on the fold and then press this down. And with freezer paper, you do got to give it some time to stick. If you just swipe your iron over it, yeah, it's just going to come peeling right back up. And again, you need to let it cool. Maybe we'll speed that part up when it's trying to cool. Now I can take it to my cutting board. Now at my cutting board, I like to use a large square. So I've got my 15-inch square here. Let's see if I can make myself some room. And I want to first cut the outside section. Now I'm going to cut it a little bigger than what the pattern is. I'm going to cut it out about 1/4 of an inch or so bigger than what the pattern is. That's going to give me some fudge factor. And this is a fudge factor that doesn't have any calories in it at all. So we want to make it so that it is, I'm going to make this right about there. So it's about 9.5. I've got 9.5 here, 9.5 here. Now I can cut this edge. There it is. Cut that away. And then I need to now cut this inside section. Now this again is where you could use a pair of scissors, or you can use, I think I'm going to use my scissors because I can't find my little ruler. Normally I'd use a small ruler here, which I probably have. Oh, there it is. Okay. This is how I do this. I like to take my small ruler and run it along the edge of the curve because this is 4 layers of fabric. And if I try to do this just kind of freehand like I did the paper piecing that was only 1 layer of fabric, the fabrics will kind of shift underneath. So instead, if you use your ruler to hold down the 4 layers of fabric, nothing will shift on you. There we go. Cut that out clean. Okay, now we can take the freezer paper off. And you can see now that I have my big circle to piece. Oops, take this guy out of there. All right. Now when you're looking at it, you want to look at the largest points. So this is north, south, east, and west. And you want to place the folds of the fabric on those intersections. So if this is how it's going to look, whoops, got a twist in here somewhere. There it is. All right. So this is the good side of the fabric, just so you can see how I do the placement. So this one is north. I'm going to take that fold and fold it down. So now right sides are together, and the fold is right there at the point of the very north. Now I'm going to spin it around, and the fold is going to go right to the point of the east. And put a pin in there. Spin it around. And this one is technically south. So you can see how the inside curved edge is being pinned to the outside curved edge of the mariner's compass. And one more. So far I have 4 pins. I'm going to put 1 more pin in each of the intersections here at the purple point. Okay. And for the most part, you can just kind of, go, all right, that's centered. You can look at the square point here and go, this is centered. You could make a little crease in your top red fabric. I'll call it your red fabric. Yours might be a different color. But the idea being is that you want it to be centered. And I find if I just follow that point down here, then I know that the top of it is centered. And I'm going to do that all the way around before we go to the sewing machine. There, I have all of my sections. I've got 8 pins in, and I got to tell you, I want to say most, I want to go with most. Most quilters are going to look at this and go, yeah, no way, Jose. I am not going to do it that way. There's got to be a better way. People are always trying to come up with better ways or easier ways to piece curves. I think it's time you try. You can do this. This is not as hard as it may look when you're looking at it as a whole. We're just going to be taking one section at a time. Now, the tool that I really like for this is a really nice sharp awl. So these are the ones my friend Gina makes. So she actually hand turns all of these epoxies. One end is an awl, and the other end is a seam ripper. Yeah, pretty much it does everything you need it to do. These are available on the website, onpoint-tv. But I'm going to go to the sewing machine and show you how simple this is. So I'm here at my sewing machine. I have my 1/4 inch set up using my guidelines for quilting for keeping my seam at that perfect scant 1/4 inch, and I'm ready to sew. Now keep in mind, you just need to do one section at a time. So I'm going to start this right here. All right. Once I get my needle going, keep your needle in the down position. Lift the presser foot if you have to, and then use your seam ripper to just kind of keep everything, or I'm sorry, your awl, to keep everything right there at the edge. Just do 1 inch at a time if you have to, but don't stretch this outer circle. This outer circle is really important because it's going to fit just perfectly. If you stretch it, it's going to be too big. And I'll just sew right over pins. If you don't want to sew over the pins, you can just take them right out and put it into your pin cushion. So I'm going to go all the way around this circle. I'm going to take my time. I'm easing with my awl, pulling the fabric to the edge, going 1 or 2 inches at a time. So I've done all the sewing all the way around, just taking it a little bit at a time. That's the trick. Just one little section at a time until you get it completely pieced like this, one big circle. Now it's time to trim it down, and I want to show you 2 different ways to trim it down. Here's the thing. This block needs to be trimmed to 18¼ inches. Well, in my hands, I have a 15-inch ruler. Many of you probably own a 15-inch ruler, but I'd be willing to bet the majority of you own at least a 12-inch ruler, and you're looking at this going, that's just not big enough. So I want to show you first the super simple, easy way to do this. It requires a large cutting mat, because you have to have it be the full size, and a really large ruler. All right. Now this is a 20½ inch ruler. I think the largest ruler you can find. It's a little bit pricey, but I got to tell you, I love mine. Now I forgot to bring mine to the studio, but I'm borrowing Gina's. It's got a little bit of crack on it. That's okay. This ruler is still good because this is the 1-1. This is where it starts counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This corner is the most important corner. This being broken down here, we don't know how it got broken. We'll just leave it up to chance, but that's okay. Don't get rid of the ruler. So this is the easiest way to trim this down. If I lay this down on the block and find 18¼ there it is right here, 18¼ 18, push that up there a little bit, 18¼ center it up there so the whole thing is on 18¼ I could cut this edge, I could cut that edge, flip that around, and then measure it into exactly 18¼ But what if? What if you don't have a big mat like this? What if you don't have a big ruler like this? Although if you don't, these are the 2 things you want to put on your Christmas or birthday list, because this is the kind of stuff that just makes the whole idea of quilting so much easier. So instead, we're going to use the smaller cutting mat. So back to just FYI, this is my Omni Grid, but I oftentimes just use the back side of it so there's no lines. And I'm going to take some freezer paper. Now this is the big roll of freezer paper, and this is 18 inches. Remember, my block is 18¼ That's okay. I can figure that extra 1/4 in. But 18 inches, I'm going to take that and fold it into quarters. All right, kind of like we did on that outside edge. Now I'm going to use my smaller ruler. I technically could even use a 9½ inch ruler. It doesn't need to be that big. And take 18¼ divided by 2, so 9⅛ inches. All right, I can do 9⅛ inches on this side, and I can't technically do it here. It's a little bit off. That's okay. I will figure that into the next step. So I'm going to cut this square 9⅛ inches, except on this side here. This one is going to be short, and I know this seems silly, but freezer paper only comes 18 inches. I need it to be bigger. So I'm going to just put a little 1/4 inch there, so that when it comes time, oops, I will see it. 1/8. That'll just give me my little hint that I need to know, because it's 1/4 inch too small. Okay. Now this has been cut into the 18⅛ almost inch. I'm going to take this large square of freezer paper. I'm going to move my mat so I don't melt it. And I'm going to center this up. So you can do, like this is how I normally do it. There it is folded. I'm going to take this to that corner. Now remember, this one's an 1/8 inch. I need to add 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 inch to the two sides of this. Center that on those points, then unfold it this way. So now it's from point to point. Oops, I actually folded it backwards, but then you can just lay it down this way. So if I fold it inside out, that makes sense. There it is. That's on the point. That's on the point. That's there. That's there. Now the top and the bottom here are where I need to leave an extra 1/8 of an inch on each part. And it's not a lot. Now keep in mind, I just did this I wrote that with a friction pen. The friction pens are the ones that disappear with a little bit of heat. So I'm just not going to press right on them. There we go. I'm going to add an 1/8 of an inch to this, and this I'm going to cut right on the edge. So this is a method of doing squaring up large blocks if you have not yet acquired a really, really big mat and a really, really big square. Is it more work? Well, sure it is more work, but that's okay. You can deal with it. Okay, let me get the smaller ruler here. This edge, I'm going to trim it right on the edge of the freezer paper. Because my freezer paper is only 18 inches and I need this whole square, to be 18 1/4, I'm going to add an extra 1/8 inch to this edge. There. Now, if you didn't have an 18 1/4 and it was just 18, then you'd be golden. You wouldn't have to deal with that. But for this project, I do. And I think some of you like knowing all of these little tricks that I come up with for making these things happen. And this one again, I'm going to add an 1/8 of an inch. And I don't get to trim a lot off of this, just enough. There. When I peel this off, that's going to be as close to perfect as I can make an 18 1/4 inch square. Seeing as how I can't make things perfect, I'm going to accept that as really, really good. The next step is to put our circle in the middle. So we have our outside square trimmed down to size. Now it's time to put the circle in the middle. Now this I'm going to even make easier for you. We're not going to try to piece that little circle, which kind of looks like a square in this pattern, but that's okay. We're going to make a template that will cover that with the circle. So I've taken the template, and what I did is I put 2 layers of freezer paper together. So it's a little bit stiffer. It's a little bit more cardboard. So just take the shiny side and iron it down onto the dull side so that you have the 2 pieces that stick together. And then take to the back of your chosen fabric, so this is the shiny side, and I'm going to iron that down onto the back of my chosen fabric. Give it a little bit for the wax to heat up a little bit, or the plastic, whatever that is made of. And then you're going to trim it around approximately 3/8 of an inch bigger-ish, sort of like this. If you make it too big, you might find little puckeries when you're doing the next step. If you make it too small, you won't have enough fabric to actually do your running stitch on. So you'll know when the size is right. So that's about 3/8 of an inch or so. All right. Now I'm going to take some heavy thread, and I have a needle around here somewhere. There it is. And this is like a quilting thread. I for hand quilting thread. Do I hand quilt? Sure I do. Once every 20 years ago. I've got nothing against hand quilting. I just honestly don't have the time to do much hand quilting. But I love hand quilting thread for things like this, when I'm doing this perfect circle technique, because it's stronger and it's a little bit thicker. And this particular one, I don't even know if it's available anymore. I've had it for so long. It's on a wooden spool. How cute is that? You don't find things on wooden spools anymore. Now I'm going to make a large knot on the bottom of this. So I've wrapped that about 8 to 9 times and pull it through. so that at the end of this line, I will have a rather large knot. And I'm going to do a running stitch all the way around this circle. And I want the stitches themselves to be about 1/4 of an inch long. And I want the stitch location to be between the paper and the edge. So that's what it's going to sort of look like there. And I'm going to go all the way around. Now, if your freezer paper starts to come off, that's okay. You can let it go if you want, or you can just repress it down and have it be secure. So let me take a minute and go all the way around this. I have stitched completely around that circle, and I want my last stitch to end up on the good side of the fabric. So now I pull it and say, voila, look at how cool that looks. I've got a perfect turned edge on a large circle. So I am going to pull that nice and snug, hold it there with my thumb, and then take a locking stitch here. Just a little knot. There. So now that's nice and strong. Cut that off. And the next thing I need to do to make sure that that stays is I need to spray size it around the edges. So just saturate your edges. Take the steam off your iron and press it completely dry. When it's completely dry, I'll be able to take the paper off, and then we'll go on to our next step. So I've pressed this completely dry, and I did let it cool completely before I do the next step. So here, that's the knot that started the whole thing. At the other end, I'm just going to nip one of those running stitches, and then if I hold that knot, I can pull that whole thread out in one piece. Then I can peel the freezer paper out. And I like to flatten it one more time with my iron. Got that little guy's poking up there. There. All right. Now I'm going to take it to my piece, and he should fit right there. And look at that, he does. So where the green intersections come. This is where I'm going to use my Roxanne's glue. I'm going to put a dot around it. About 1 inch apart, the dots are. Be sure you cap it. You're supposed to clean that out before you put it away. Yeah, that happens. Not. Okay, now we'll set that there so it's right in place. Then I'm going to speed up the drying process with my iron. We're going to go to our sewing machine next, and at my sewing machine, I have put in my invisible monofilament thread. Now keep in mind that not all invisible monofilament threads are created equal. Most of them, I want to say 99% of them, are really just great. They're 0.004 in a diameter, however thin they are, and there is one that is not. I can't say what name that is on the show, but if you want to email me, I'd be happy to tell you which one is not. So if you're wondering if yours is too thick, send me an email. I'll let you know. Okay, so that's all dry. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine. I've got my invisible in the top, and I have put my open toe walking foot back on my machine so I can see what I'm doing, because I'm going to be doing invisible machine applique. I set my sewing machine up onto its normal zigzag, but I took it down to be very narrow. It's at a 1.2 in the width and a 2.0 in the length. What you're going to do on your machine is going to depend on your machine, but that works great for my machine. And I also have, and I really think this is so important, I shouldn't have skipped it at the very last, I put in a 60 microtex needle. Now remember, for normal piecing, I do a 70. When I'm doing paper piecing, I do an 80. I want a little bit bigger. But for invisible machine applique, I want a 60. Here is the only problem with the 60, is my automatic threader doesn't work. The needle is too small, the automatic threaders don't work, so you have to thread it yourself. Well, that's okay, because the only thread I ever use with my Microtex 60 is my invisible, and that is, the makeup of it is like one little piece of plastic. You just got to get it through the eye of the needle. So it's not too hard, but trust me, that 60 makes all the difference. So I'm at my machine, and I've got my invisible in. Yeah, it's invisible. Sometimes it's hard to find it. There we go. And the idea here is I'm going to use my zigzag to go zig on, zig off, zig on, zig off, zig on, zig off. Say that 10 times fast. As you're going, you'll lift your presser foot to turn, and then just continue to zig on and zag off. Now, if you wanted to, you could sew this by hand. That would be absolutely perfect to hand applique this, but it really is totally up to you. If you've never done invisible machine applique on other projects, I do have a video out there called Invisible Machine Applique where I take you through some other processes along with this perfect circle technique for turning the edges under. So let me get around this one and I'll tell you what we're going to do next. So there I've appliqued my circle done and the center of my quilt is finished. So there you have with Mariner's Compass. The next step to this particular quilt is the reverse applique. Now we're going to do reverse applique by hand. If you've never seen anybody do reverse applique or needle turn applique, you're not going to want to miss this episode because I'll take you through those steps on creating that. The book is available on the website onpoint-tv.com. If you have any questions, you can email me at quiltingwithnancy@gmail.com. I do have a membership available on my YouTube channel. The link is below, and that's where you can get a couple of different perks. For instance, if you are a Quilt Addict member, you will receive this book for free. It's part of the perks and will come along with all the other books that I have made. And then there's an electric quilt training session for those designer members where I could teach you how to design this quilt in electric quilt. So many options and so many things to learn. Hope to see you next time.